Some may have detected that Tolkien's mythopia contains parallels to the Atlantis myth of a sunken island and lost civilization, which he named as Númenor, and its survivors were known as the Dunedain, of which Aragorn belonged. In a letter dated the 5th of January 1961, Tolkien confirmed the connection between Atlantis and his legends of Númenor. They are my own use for my own purposes of the Atlantis legend, but not based on special knowledge, but on a special personal concern with this tradition of the culture-bearing men of the sea, which so profoundly affected the imagination of peoples of Europe with westward shores. The mythology of Atlantis was clearly strong in his psyche, and Tolkien wrote the following in letter 163. I say this about the heart, for I have what some might call an Atlantis complex, possibly inherited, though my parents died too young for me to know such things about them, and too young to transfer such things by words. Inherited from me, I suppose, by one only of my children, though I did not know that about my son until recently, and he did not know it about me. I mean the terrible recurrent dream, beginning with memory, of the great wave towering up and coming in ineluctably over the trees and green fields. I bequeathed it to Faramir. I don't think I have had it since I wrote The Downfall of Númenor as the last of the legends of the First and Second Age. But was the tale of Atlantis, which has touched many people so deeply, including Tolkien, really a myth, or could there be some truth in the notion of an extreme cataclysm leading to the loss of a civilization, and what led to their terrible downfall? Tolkien was inspired by Egyptian culture and his depictions of Númenorian culture, and in Letter 211 he described how the Númenorians resembled the Egyptians in the love of constructing the gigantic, and described them as proud, peculiar and archaic. Over time, the Númenorians fell into shadow and arrogance and were corrupted by the lies and deception of Sauron. They turned away from the elves and the deities known as the Valar, whom they began to disobey, worshipping the Dark Lord instead. In arrogance, they attempted to expand and venture to divine lands without permission and faced the karmic consequences. A giant flood overcame the island and the people were lost. Yet a small group who had remained faithful and uncorrupted by the lies of Sauron survived by escaping in 9 ships, and they became the Dunedain. After the fall, Númenor was known as Atlante, a Quenya word meaning the downfallen. In reality, some researchers have examined the possibility that there were survivors of a great civilization collapse. According to Plato, Atlantis collapsed 9,000 years before he was writing in 360 BC, which brings us exactly to the period of the Meltwater Pulse 1b, which caused significant flooding in 9,600 BC, and many lands across the world were submerged. This accuracy surely can't be a coincidence, so Plato was clearly demonstrating knowledge of something historical. The start of the Holocene geological epoch began in 9700 BC, and the word came from 2 Greek words meaning whole and new, meaning that something completely new began after the great floods. Like Tolkien's depiction of the Númenorians, Plato described the Atlanteans as virtuous people who later became corrupt. They attempted to invade the kingdom of the Athenians, and shortly afterwards there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis, in like manner, disappeared in the depths of the sea. In Critias, Plato described how the island was connected to the god of the sea, Poseidon, and his eldest son Atlas, born of Cleito, became the first king of the island. With Cleito, Poseidon had 5 twin sons who became 10 princes of the 10 portions of the island. Elephants existed on Atlantis, and many fruits were described, including what sounded like coconuts, although names were not given by Plato, suggesting that these were exotic fruits, as well as many fragrant essences and incenses from plants. These descriptions seem to point to an Asian area rather than around Plato's homeland, and it was stated as being in the centre of the world, which could point to an equatorial region such as Indonesia. The Atlantis island was described as sacred and idyllic, holding infinite abundance, and they received blessings from the earth while they constructed their temples, palaces, and docks. Plato explained how they created a city palace for their god and for ancestry worship, honouring their ancestors of each generation. It had elaborate structure with canals, fountains, and baths. Finally, they began to lose their ethics and virtue and became corrupted over time. Zeus punished them in order that they might be chastened and improve. However, the rest of the Critias text by Plato was lost, explaining the deeds of Zeus, who had summoned all the gods, which likely involved him unleashing the floods and earthquakes, which led to its destruction. Researchers have noticed that many myths across the world speak of great floods, as well as the arrival of advanced people who just suddenly appeared after this time, often from their ships. Perhaps the most notable example was Noah and his boat who escaped the flooding of his land. In some accounts it was described how the deity Quetzalcoatl arrived at Mexico by boat, and according to Celtic mythology, the Tuatha De Danann arrived to Ireland from 4 great cities and brought great knowledge. I was recently called to visit Gunung Padang in Indonesia, which has been the focus of many researchers, including Graham Hancock in his recent documentary series Ancient Apocalypse. He believed the site is far older than we realised and could relate to an ancient civilization which was lost in a catastrophe. There has been a lot of debate and controversy regarding its history and mainstream views, which I won't go into here, and while people may not agree with everything shared by researchers such as Hancock, it is insightful to hear different views and develop our own conclusions. The reality is our history of ancient civilizations is not certain, and places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey have opened up a can of worms regarding previous conceptions of ancient civilizations and shown that advancements were much older than many historians previously posited. I think it is important to be both open-minded, yet also have healthy skepticism regarding what we absorb and to explore and question things for ourselves. Indonesia used to be far bigger and was part of a landmass called the Sunda Shelf, which connected it to Asia. Yet Sundaland eventually submerged with the rising sea levels of the Meltwater Pulse 1b, and only the highlands remained as the islands of Indonesia, which exist today. Some researchers have written books stating that this area of Sundaland was the true location of Atlantis. Gunung Padang is considered as highly sacred to the Sundanese people. It is full of ancient stones and symbols related to Sundanese philosophy, which included ancestor worship. The site featured in Graham Hancock's documentary, and there's been a lot of controversy about how old this site actually is. Is it possible that their ancestors were the ancient Atlanteans? The temple is divided into 5 floors or terraces, which the guides explained to me related to the Sundanese Wiwitan philosophy of Buwana Pancha Tanga, meaning the middle world or middle earth, which is divided into 5 cardinal directions of east, west, north, south, and the centre. They believed the universe was divided into 3 realms, beginning with the lowest realm of hell, below the middle world where humans and animals lived, and the highest realm was known as the Pointy Realm, the place of the supreme being known as Sang Hyang Kursa. Each of the 5 terraces contained different stones, including the Gendong stone on the 4th level. It was thought by some that the ability to lift this stone would signify strength of character to continue to the highest level, or it was believed to fulfill prayers if it was lifted. The 5th terrace at the top is home to the throne stone, called Batu Singgasana, and is thought to be the most sacred area. This is likely where the alchemy between feminine and masculine energies occurred during meditation, and was likely the fertile area of the temple. Locals believe that the throne stone could be a place to sit and pray and elevate one's position. Significant stones at the site include the Kujang stone, named after a weapon, the tiger's footprint stone, the human foot stone, the crown of the world, the gamelan stone, and the throne stone. The tiger stone is intriguing and curiously corresponds to Sundanese mythology, in which it was believed that King Siliwangi had the palace temple built in one night by supernatural means, and the throne at the top level is believed to belong to him. According to legends, King Siliwangi was connected to tigers, and when Islam came to Java, he refused to convert, but also did not want to fight his kin. So he left the Sundanese sacred capital of Pakuan Pajajaran and retreated to Mount Salak and became a tiger spirit. In the 17th century, the ruined remains of Pakuan Pajajaran were discovered amidst rainforest and guarded by many tigers, which were seen as magical beings. A Sundanese stone from the city, known as Batu Tulis, can still be found at its original location. Sundanese culture is rich in mythology, which is passed down by an oral storytelling tradition known as Pantun Sunda, and these stories were often memorized by bards and weren't written down originally. Their stories were seen as sacred, and offerings were given at the start of a performance. Sundanese theatre was known as Sandiwara, and the word Sunda is thought to derive from the Sanskrit words including Shuddha, meaning white or pure, or Su, meaning goodness. The Temple of Gunung Padang means mountain of light in the Sundanese language, and at the beginning of the stairs, made of andesite stones, can be found the purifying well. There are now a few researchers who have written about an Indonesian Atlantis, including Stephen Oppenheimer, who has done research for his book, Eden in the East. Some believe that the founding cradle civilization was Sundaland, which was destroyed by the catastrophic floods. I didn't agree with everything writer Arysio Santos wrote on the same topic and his interpretation of certain symbols, but he claims to have been the first to develop and research the theory and has clearly done a lot of research. He drew some interesting conclusions and said that the Ramayana tale portrayed the story of the fall of Atlantis as a battle between good and evil. This tale was written in the 5th century BC and is popularly found across Indonesia, presented at ancient temples and in cultural performance such as in dance and shadow puppetry. In the Ramayana, the city of Lankapura was overtaken by demons, including the demon king Ravana, who had kidnapped Sita. It was destroyed by fire by the monkey Hanuman, who also could move mountains and built a bridge over the ocean to reach Lanka. He may have represented the volcanic earth energy, which can create or destroy land. Interestingly, in the Ramayana, it is said that Sita was hidden on the island of Java or Java Dvipam in Sanskrit. This has been translated by some as Java, such as in the following section, which describe the search for Sita. Go beyond Java Island, filled with precious gems. It has 7 kingdoms. It is adorned with gold and silver mines in abundance. There is a mountain, Sisara, abode of Garuda, beyond Java Island. It touches the sky with its lofty cliffs. Gods and demons visit this mountain. You may look for illustrious Rama's consort in these inaccessible mountains, waterfalls, and forests. Santos pointed out that in ancient times the Atlantic Ocean was understood as reaching as far as the East Indies, the area of Indonesia which Christopher Columbus originally set out to explore before his own discovery of America. The East Indies, already known through land connections with the Silk Road, therefore also represented the far west over the ocean. At the extreme west is where Atlas was said to abide according to the Greek poet Hesiod. This opens the possibility of the island of Atlantis being located as far as Indonesia in the ocean, as described by Plato. Indonesia as the possible location of the Atlantis Eden paradise spoken about in myths across the world also has powerful earth energy, which could be another clue pointing to this location, which is found in the Ring of Fire, a belt around the Pacific Ocean of active and dormant volcanoes. The theory of a great cataclysm and civilization loss is not unlikely when understanding the history of this region. The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia was the most destructive in recorded history and led to the collapse of 70% of the island in the hollow of the magma chamber. The process involved earthquakes, tsunamis, and many deaths. The impact of the tsunamis were felt as far away as the English Channel and tidal gauges. Temperatures were affected across the northern hemisphere throughout the summer, and the ashfall created red sunsets for many months. In Plato's Critias, he described how the island of Atlantis sunk due to an earthquake and floods, creating an impassable barrier of mud. This could have been connected with volcanic activity, as Arysio Santos surmised. Mud flows are also found in Indonesia, and in Sidoarjo in Java in 2006 there was an eruption of a boiling mud volcano which destroyed many villages, and Indonesia has many muddy coastlines of mangrove forests. Robert Kuhn has done extensive research on the two Earth energy lines that cross over the Earth with yin and yang energies. The two serpent lines crossed in two locations, at Bali in Indonesia and also at Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. Kuhn wrote about dragon or serpent mythology across the planet and its connection with these energy lines, the most obvious examples being the rainbow serpent of Australia and the feathered serpent of Aztec and Mayan culture, and he believed that they represented the male and female serpent energies. Dragons, serpents and snakes can be seen in temple iconography across Indonesia and are seen as protectors of sacred places. Dragon symbology can represent earth energy, including ley lines or earth channels, and sacred sites or religious buildings have often been built on areas of potency, which can include powerful water or naturally good chi. Some areas can be nurturing or energizing, whereas others can be more purifying or grounding, depending on the energies that are doused. Nowadays, Indonesia is a country of 17,508 official islands, the former highlands of the sunken Sundaland, and is home to many different people speaking over 800 languages and keeping peace and respect amongst each other. Indonesia is a beautiful place to learn about virtues such as tolerance, especially regarding different religious or spiritual views. Here people will find a way to live harmoniously with many differing cultures and are able to find the common grounds. This land holds a deep memory and contains many secrets waiting to be told. Yet in the Atlantean myths of catastrophe from the past can be found lessons for all of us. To honour this beautiful earth, to respect our ancestors, to live in harmony without arrogance with our science and technology, and to ensure that our ideas and developments are also aligned with nature, ethics, and good virtues. In life, we can always ensure that we learn from the lessons of the ancestors and do not repeat them. Like Aragorn of the Dunedain or Rama and Sita of the Ramayana, we have the opportunity to heal any disharmonious patterns or shadows of the past and to live in harmony once more.